Hi guys, hope everyone is well and welcome back to the Improvement Podcast. So in this episode I want to jump into addressing weak body parts, and what I'm basically going to provide is all the necessary steps you should take if you want to, like I said, address weak body parts. These are somewhat in order. For some it is hard to order them like towards the end, but the first few are the ones you should definitely prioritise and make sure are in place for reasons I will discuss. So, not much to update on myself, to be honest. Same as last week, in a gaining phase. Things are going well, training's going well. I just finished a devolume week to drop fatigue, so not really much to say really, but I'm happy with the progress I'm making. I just did compare a photo from 2 months ago to a photo now, and it was really nice to see some progress. It is hard to see progress in the off season or gaining phase, whatever you want to call it, when body fat is higher, because the muscle you do gain is not always that visible until you diet down. So it was really nice to see some progress take place. And you also have more fat stored around like your joints. For example, if you've got more fat stored around your knee joint, your quads don't look like they go out as much, if that makes sense, or you don't look like you have as much shape to your muscles. So regardless of that, it's nice to just see myself progressing noticeably in a short space of time, which is always good, especially considering I've not had that much of a solid run of training with suffering from exertion headaches. So yeah, it is really nice to see for sure. So getting into the podcast topic, addressing weak body parts. The first thing I want to dive into is exercise selection. So are your exercises, let's say, not optimal, but appropriate for the body part you want to grow? For example, if you're doing movements that target your upper back, if you want to grow your lats, then regardless of how your form is, if you're performing an upper back movement that's really hard to engage your lats in, you're probably not going to engage your lats, believe it or not. So first of all, you want to select appropriate exercises. So appropriate exercises, what defines an appropriate exercise? So I'd say something where you can progress in quite a stable environment. So what I mean by that is, a stable environment is just basically where there's not a great deal of balance taking place. So a good example is like a leg press. So a leg press you can really lock in, you're really stable because you're sitting in the seat, holding down on the handles, and you can just focus on pressing the weight, hence why you're usually strong at a leg press, in comparison to like a squat. What would be the opposite is like squatting on a Bosu ball. There's no reason why you should have to balance on a Bosu ball if you want to grow your legs. You're just risking injury and making things hard for yourself and limiting the amount of weight you can lift and how much you can challenge your quadricep in this example by just being on a Bosu ball, simple as that. I know it's quite a weird example and it's not something you probably do unless you've got no clue about building muscle, but yeah, it's an easy example to use, hence why I've used it. So what else makes a effective exercise could be potentially ones you can keep the load on the target muscle. For example, if you're performing like a clean and jerk, it's probably not good to grow your like quads. I don't know if you know what a clean and jerk is. Not all you might, but it's an Olympic weightlifting lift where you basically, it's like deadlifting the bar off the ground, then catching it in like a front squat position and then pressing it up. So the load's not going to stay on your quads when you're standing upright and pressing the weight up. It's going to strain your shoulders, and we don't want to be involved in other muscle groups to that degree. We want to keep the load on the muscle group we're trying to train and not waste energy balancing the weight, using other muscle groups to press it up, etc. So that's not really ideal if you want to grow muscle. So a better alternative would be the squat. And as well as that, we want ones where we can do like a large range of motion ideally. So ones that will let us take, it doesn't have to be like a full range of motion, but for example, we don't really want to be quarter squatting because we'll just handle a lot of load. It'll be very fatiguing, or in other words, just tiring, and we won't get that much out of the movement. So make sure it's ones you can have quite a large range of motion in and keep the load on the target muscle in a relatively stable environment. And on top of that, you want ones that you're not going to get injured in and ones that you can progress. So you don't want to be doing a movement in your gym where you can't really progress it. For example, if you're maxed out a machine, yes, you can add bands to the machine, maybe try and do more reps, but you want a lot of progressive runway. So what I mean by this is just room for improvement, because if you don't have room to apply progressive overload, you're not really going to be able to. And as a result, you're not going to be able to grow a lot of tissue from it. So, yeah, so to summarise, just choose a movement that you can perform progressively and keep which trains the target muscle, simple as that. So next up is form. So form's massively important. Before how hard you train, before how much reps you do, which we'll get into, you should make sure your form's immaculate, in my opinion, especially if it's a weakness, because there's no point adding, let's say, drop sets, rest pause sets, anything like that to put more stress on your muscle if you're not even putting the optimal stress on your muscle by simply doing the exercise right. So make sure your form's appropriate for what muscle you want to target. A good examples are bench press. So make sure you've got a good grip where your elbows are a wee bit flared but not too flared that it hurts your shoulders. So you want them tucked in a wee bit in a comfortable manner. So just a way where you're not going to get injured but you can still feel your chest, basically. So that's a good example. Whereas if you had a really, really close grip and your elbows were tucked in, it's going to be mostly triceps and shoulders being worked. So regardless of how hard you're going to train, if you're not even recruiting the right muscle, then you're not going to grow it. Simple as that. So make sure your form is on point to target the right muscle. I'm not really going to dive into how to perform each exercise correctly, because that's obviously something I can't really achieve in a podcast episode. But if anyone's got any form clips they'd like me to analyse or look over, then please send me them and I'd be more than happy to do so. But good form is, keeping the load on the muscle you want to work, and also making sure the weight's controlled. So you're controlling it on the way down, you're not just using momentum to get it from the bottom to the top. For example, you're not bouncing a weight off your chest, and also you're just controlling it, simple as that, because you want your muscle to be moving the weight the full time. You don't want momentum, speed, power, other muscle groups to be contributing to it. So next up is intensity. So if you're training and you don't train that hard and you're leaving quite a few reps in the tank and you don't really put an effort into your training, what's the point adding another set when you could just train harder? Simple as that. And this will just help you progress, because if you train harder, you'll get more reps, which means you'll increase the stress or stimulus placed on your muscle. So next up, just make sure you're training to failure, or failure being as much reps as you can with good form. A good thing to monitor your intensity is how slow does the last rep move. For example, if you ever record yourself training, if your last rep moves as fast as your first rep, you probably got more reps in the tank. Your last rep should ideally move pretty slow. So each exercise will change how slow the weight will move depending on how hard it is at certain points of the lift, but I'm not going to get into that. So basically you don't want your last rep flying up. You want it to be quite a graft and you want it to move relatively slow, and that's a good indicator you're training close to failure. So just make sure that's the case, and you're maximising each set before thinking about adding new ones. So intensity is not something you can just think, I'm going to train intense and reach failure with excellent form, and you're not going to get there overnight. It takes a long time to learn how to train intensely. Something I'm still working on, and everyone can always train more intense. So whenever you think, I train hard enough, you're probably not. So yeah, just continue to work on it. You'll get there. The more you push yourself each session, each set, the harder you'll be able to train, in my opinion. So yeah, once you've made sure that you're making the most of each set you are currently doing, what you could look to do is add volume. So volume is basically adding, more sets and reps basically. So this can be done through adding it to the current session. So it's dependent on the situation and what split you're doing. But for example, if you're only doing 2 sets of bench press, you could do 3 if you feel you're recovering from it fine and your chest feels like not absolutely fucked after the second set. You could add another one in, and you could do that throughout a few exercises, so you're doing some additional sets throughout the week. And then from there, what you basically want to do is monitor progress. Are your lifts progressing really well? If so, you could just keep it there and see if there's any changes in your muscularity. And if so, magic, just keep it like that unless there's a need to change it. But if not, you can maybe add more volume. So you can add volume on the current days you're training the body part, or do it on other days as well. For example, my biceps are something that aren't super weak, but something that I could do with a bit more size and could be bigger, put it that way. So due to that, me and my coach have added 3 sets of biceps onto the end of legs, and also on the end of legs. So I'm basically training them every day, 5 days a week. As a result, they are pretty much responding well. I believe they do feel bigger and look bigger, and they feel stronger. And the reason why this is appropriate is because my biceps recover extremely well. So when I train my biceps, I get minimal soreness, although I'm training accurately and hard. So that's a sign I can handle doing more volume. And biceps are a common one to experience this, whereas body parts like your legs, your hamstrings, quadriceps, they might get a bit more sore. Everyone's individual, so some people might find a body part gets really sore, some people might not. I had a conversation about this with my mate Ben in the gym actually, so I was saying how like my calves are just knackered after doing 2 sets until the next time I train legs. It's like they're sore up until it, whereas his don't really get sore at all. And what this basically indicates is, this is just me using anecdotal evidence. If you don't really get really sore in a body part, you don't experience much soreness, you could probably handle more volume. And most of the time, the body parts that don't get that sore for me are a weakness, which is weird. So I don't know if there's any correlation between that. It's just sprung to my head now, but it's something quite interesting to me. So you could also add high intensity techniques. So these are things like rest pause sets, maybe not a superset, or a drop set, or maybe even a superset. We'll go with superset. So these are basically things that allow you to accumulate effective reps or more volume. Simple as that. Volume being set time reps. So the reason why you might want to use these instead of standard sets is everyone's only got so much time they want to spend in the gym. So adding in things like a rest pause set allows you to get more reps without having to rest for ages in between sets. And I'm not going to jump into what each one is, but rest pause set's something quite unfamiliar for most individuals. So a rest pause set is basically doing a set, waiting 20 seconds, doing the set again, waiting 20 seconds, doing the set again, keeping the weight the same. So that's a good example of what you could do. And then next up after that's frequency. So if you're training your quads once a week and they're a weakness, then you can maybe look at training them more often. The reason why this might be the case is because you're only really putting them under stress once a week, whereas you could argue if you train them, let them recover, twice a week, then they've got more chances and more opportunities to basically grow. So, for example, I train legs twice a week, but one session's mostly quads, one session's mostly hamstrings, but I still train my quads and my hamstrings on both sessions. So I think this is very beneficial, and a good reason why is what builds muscle is lifting a decent amount of weight through rep ranges that cause muscle growth with good form, right? So let's say you only train quads once a week, and that time you do 15 sets for quads. Bit of an exaggeration, but let's just go with it. Or, sorry, let's say 14 so it works, right? So just bear with me. If you do 14 sets in the one day, is your 14th set when you're training your quads gonna be that effective? Is it gonna be that much quality work? Or are you just gonna be absolute fried going through the motions? On the other hand, if you train quads twice a week, you do 7 sets each session, the last set on each session is probably going to be more beneficial, and you're going to probably be able to lift more load than if you done a 14th set on the one leg day. So what I'm basically saying is you're probably going to be able to overall lift more load throughout each session. As a result, you're probably going to be just have a better ability to grow muscle, because yeah, like I said, mechanical tension is the main driver of muscle growth. Or in other words, how much load is on your muscles. So if load's higher because you're not as fatigued at the end of your workout throughout the whole week, for example, like if you lift more load throughout the whole week by splitting the 2 sessions up, you're probably going to grow more tissue than doing all the sets in one session, if that makes sense. So hopefully I've described that well enough for you. It's something quite awkward to explain, but yeah, I think that's something that everyone should take into consideration, because if you're doing 14 sets for quads, your 14th set's not going to be that beneficial, let's be honest. You're going to be absolutely exhausted, and yeah, I just don't see much use of doing it. Whereas you could just split up and get more work in a more beneficial manner. So that is, yeah, so frequency there. Next up is exercise order and also session order. So in terms of exercise order, are you training your weak body parts at the end of the session? If so, no wonder they're weak, because why would they be a strength if you're not prioritising them? So if you're leaving them till the end, that's when you've got the least focus, you've probably got the least amount of energy, and you're probably not going to train with the same intensity as the first set. So a good thing to do is move it to the start of the session, where you can give it the most basically effort, intensity and attention. Simple as that. So this a good example is putting your bicep work at the start of the session. Most people train back and then do a couple sets of biceps at the end. Why not switch it about if your back's a strength and your biceps a weakness? Train your biceps at the start, they get the most attention, they'll probably be able to grow a bit better, and then you may potentially be able to lift slightly more load from not being fatigued from the back work, and then from there you can train your back. So that will probably do some good to help grow your weak body part. And next up is session order. So this one, for most beginners, it's not incredibly important. The reason being is, the reason why session order matters is if you're training, let's say, 3 days in the trot, in the third session, you're probably going to have more fatigue, just physical and mental tiredness from training for the last 3 days or 2 days before that session. So something beneficial to do could be to move the body part you're trying to grow to the first session after a rest day. So you're targeting it when you're fresh and when you've got the most energy and you're not fatigued, so you can perform your best. And like I said, you're not going to accumulate a lot of fatigue through training as a beginner. As you begin to get really strong and yeah, just get stronger and bigger in the gym, it's going to become more of a priority to consider fatigue. But it is still something you could do to try and just make sure the body part you're trying to target is going to grow. But it shouldn't be too much of an issue if you're relatively new to training, I don't think so. But just something I wanted to comment on for some individuals to think about anyway, because it could come in handy. And next up after that is everything nailed outside your sessions. So what I mean by this is, how does your sleep look like? How does your nutrition look like? How does your stress look like? So in terms of your sleep, are you sleeping a decent period? And are you training your weak body part on a Friday night and then having 4 hours of sleep on Friday night, Saturday morning, whatever you want to call it? Because if so, you're not really giving yourself much time to recover. I actually experienced this when I used to drink quite a lot when I was younger. So I used to always squat on Friday, and then following that squat session, I used to always go out, drink, and then my squat just wouldn't increase. Like, I just reached a bit of a plateau, I remember. And then after that, I remember taking some time off drinking for some reason. I can't really remember why. And my squat just started flying up. I was just putting weight on the bar on a session to session basis. Probably because I was sleeping better, so my muscles recovering more effectively. And I was basically putting myself in a better position to grow and get stronger. Simple as that. So that's something to consider. Moving your sessions around to when you're sleeping the best. And especially if you're working as well. So if you're on your feet all day working, are you training after that? If so, if it is possible to fit in your routine, you could try and train before it, or train a day you're not working. Obviously that's not feasible for everyone, and it definitely doesn't have to be the case if you're trying to like grow muscle. Like, you can still 100% grow your legs if you're walking all day and that. Like, I used to cycle to the gym. I used to cycle to work, back from work to the gym, train legs, cycle back to the gym, and my legs still managed to grow and I managed to progress. So it's definitely not essential, but something you could think about, as well as ensuring you're sleeping well and like training at an appropriate time. How's your stress? So we know stress impacts our performance and our ability to grow muscle. So if you're really, really stressed, you could maybe look at taking actions to decrease stress. And as well as that, what does your nutrition look like? So are you not eating before your workout? If so, you're probably not going to have the best session. If you're not eating after your workout, you're probably not giving your muscles the best chance to recover. So that's something else to consider. So apart from that, I think that is pretty much everything. So hope that helped. And if anyone's got any questions of anything I covered, please just let me know and I'll be more than happy to answer them. And yeah, please let me know if you also find it useful. And if you're on Apple Podcasts, whatever you call it, please leave me a review and a rating. That would be greatly appreciated. Like if you're on YouTube. And I don't even know what you can do if you're on Spotify, but thank you for listening anyway. Hope everyone has a great day.